So you got a Ronin SC. Today I want to show you how to set it up and some of the best settings you can start out with to fine tune it for your use. Hey, my name's Jake Sloan, and this channel is all about helping solo creators like myself create better videos and take better photos using drones, cameras, and other technology. So I do tech reviews and related tutorials. The DJI Ronin SC is a great small compact travel gimbal for anybody who does stuff like this, where you're hiking, camping, traveling the world, anything like that. People who create content, aka videos for YouTube, it's a great gimbal for you, especially if you use mirrorless cameras at smaller, lighter weight setups. So you've got your Ronin SC set up, balanced. Let's talk about some of the settings you can use to get the smoothest, the bestest, the most creamiest, the crispiest footage you can possibly get. Crispy is a word people use on YouTube nowadays, right? Using the DJI Ronin app, it's actually really easy to set up the 3 different modes here, which you can cycle through by just pushing the button. Actually, it's one of my favorite features about the Ronin SC. Open the app, press user profile, and you have M1, M2, and M3. So I set up M1 as the very slow, like I'm walking around, I want to do really the most slow movement, stable footage. Probably good for real estate, it's good for a few other things that I do, but essentially it's the most slow response that you want, that I wanted in the gimbal. And so you can see here I have the speed I set to custom because I couldn't figure out their kind of setups that they had. I couldn't fine tune it exactly the way I wanted, so my pan is at 25, my tilt is at 25, and my roll is at 25. The deadband is at low because I want this to respond as soon as I start making motions. That's the way I like to work. You may find that if you set your deadpan at high or a different way, then you might want it that way. Essentially, if it's at high, you can see how much slower the gimbal responds to when you make a change. It takes quite a bit longer time to respond. So I like it at low because then I know as soon as I start to move with the gimbal, it's gonna move with me. For the push pan and tilt, if you have it on, which is what I do, push pan tilt, essentially you can move the camera to wherever you want it to be and it will stay there. If you hold it there for a second, it'll stay there. If you have it off, like so, no matter what you do, the gimbal will snap back to the position it was in. Again, depending on your uses, might be what you want. I leave it on push pan tilt. The other thing you can change is the pan tilt follow. You can do pan follow, which is it will turn left to right, but it will keep the same tilt all the time. If you do FPV, it of course will tilt left to right. If you do customize, you can customize some things that I don't do. And if you do the 360 roll, it will of course do the 360 roll, which is what everybody wants. And you can customize the speed, etc. right there. And always a double tap on the trigger will recenter everything and set you back. Now for M2, my memory 2 is more for when I'm moving faster, walking, running, following somebody that's walking fast, anything like that. And so the response is just quite a bit faster. I found the medium settings to be really good. Again, I don't like the low, or I don't like anything higher than the low setting for the deadband. And then I have the push pan off because I want the gimbal to pop back to wherever it was. And I use the joystick primarily to set it for where I need. And a lot of times I use this when I'm running through bushes and stuff, and if something hits the gimbal, I want it to snap back to where it was. I also have this on pan follow so that the tilt always remains the same. So this is good for a lot of like jib type shots when I'm going up the side of something, and I can use the gimbal to control the tilt if I want to. Change the tilt. Now for M3, this is like your sports mode, really fast, everything's high, really quick. Push pan is off again. I have it for just tilt, or I have it set for tilt, pan, and follow, so it'll basically move in all directions pretty fast. So there's some of my settings on how I've set the gimbal up. A couple of other things, the trigger, if you don't know yet, you can tap it 3 times and it will come around to selfie mode. So you can record yourself talking to a camera like every crazy person on YouTube does nowadays, because it's normal. Used to be talking in the air was crazy too, but now it's not because we have Bluetooth headsets. Double tap will send it back around. If you push and hold the trigger button down, it enters lock mode, which essentially means the camera will not deviate from whatever it was pointed at. No matter how crazy you get with the gimbal, it'll stay exactly the same. I'm gonna walk you through the app real quick to talk about the different settings. We already went over motor parameters and how important it is to auto tune for each camera and setup that you set on here, so it sets each motor strength accordingly. It's a fast and simple and easy process. I do recommend you do it somewhat regularly, or if you ever notice that your camera is shaking a bit, that means either your balance is off or the motor strength is off. So running it through that will do wonders. Balance adjustment is real easy to see if you've balanced everything well or not. You can check the status of everything here. You can even pause the motors so that the motors are off, and then unpause them again so that they pop back on if you want. You can disable selfie mode so that 1, 2, 3 taps won't do anything, but keep the camera the way it is. You can also calibrate and restore the system settings the way it was originally from DJI there. If you tap on create, you have the virtual joystick, which allows you to control the camera, and you can also change the speeds you want. 30 to 40 is generally pretty good for me. Any faster than that, and it seems to be really, really fast. Active track, I did a whole video on active track right here. It'll be in the end cards too, but it's very important that you have the phone mounted on the camera. If you don't, it won't work. Don't try it that way. It will not work. Force mobile is interesting. It could be useful, but you basically have to set up with 2 phones or a wireless monitor system or something so that when you're using the phone to control, turn it on, so that when you're using the phone to control the camera, turn that down a little bit because it's really fast. There we go. So when you're using the phone to control the camera, you can actually see what your camera is seeing, which is important. It is kind of fun to play with, but and the phone has to be in the upright position like this. If you ever get into trouble or it gets misaligned with the way you don't want it, you can recenter the camera, and it's amazing how sensitive it is. If I shake my phone, it shakes the camera, which is actually kind of cool. Disable that. Panorama, if you want to set to take a large panorama, you can set your sensor type, your focal length, how much overlap you want, and what delay you want between pictures. So if you're doing slower shutter speed, and then of course you can set up how big you want the panorama. Like this would be, you know, 10 billion pixels or something like that. I'm not going to do that, but that's a panorama there. Time lapse is very cool. I've shot a couple of time lapses. You can see them now. But you set your interval, how long you want the time lapse to run, and then what your frame rate is going to be at. So I always do things at 24 FPS because I'm not an uncivilized person. And generally at 10 seconds to 12 seconds is great for time lapses. And then it calculates exactly how many photos you need to take in order to do that. Motion lapse is where the camera will move between different points that you set, and you can set a lot of points if you want. And the same thing applies. You can set your interval, set how long you want the time lapse to run, and what your ending frame rate's gonna be, and then it will calculate exactly how many photos you need to take. Motion lapse is really, really cool for a lot of things, but I do find that you have to be very limited in the amount of motion you're going to do, because otherwise it's a little too much and overwhelming. Motion control, it's the same thing. You can pre-program motion movements to go from point A to point B, and how long you want the duration to be. So if we're going from here, like that is going to take 15 minutes to do this movement from there to there, and then how long you want it to stay at various places. Like you get to from point A to point B, or point 1 to point 2, it'll stay there for X amount of seconds. And then you can also do camera settings, which essentially is zoom speed only. If I had the focus wheel on here, you could control the power zoom in this lens using the focus wheel if you wanted to. I've never used the focus motor. I'm not really a big fan of them. I've never used the power zoom feature because I just generally don't like that very much. But you could do that right there if you wanted to. If you want to see more videos about the Ronin SC, how to use different features, etc., you can click or tap right here. If you want to see reviews of other technology that I use as a solo creator that might help you out, you can click or tap right here, and I'll see you in one of those videos. So if you have other questions or specific questions about how to use the Ronin SC, let me know in the comments below because I'll be happy to answer any questions I can.